What if I told you that an innocent, supposedly healthy bowl of morning oatmeal could be burning your internal organs at the exact same rate as a diagnosed diabetic?
Yeah, it sounds completely absurd when you first hear it.
Right. But welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive. If you're listening right now, it's because, you're a curious learner. You want those underlying aha moments of human biology, but without drowning in a sea of medical jargon.
Exactly.
And our mission today is to cut through all the massive amounts of health noise out there and decode what the research is calling the blueprint for cellular and cognitive longevity. We've got this stack of incredibly detailed sources that span metabolic, cognitive, and mental health.
And the core theme running through all of these sources, well, it requires a massive paradigm shift because longevity isn't just about, tagging a few extra, potentially miserable years onto the end of your life in a nursing home.
Nobody wants that.
Right. It's about fundamentally changing how your cells and your neurons behave today. Like right now, we're looking at microscopic strategies that actually alter your biological age, starting right at the foundation of your metabolism.
So let's start right there at the foundation, looking at the daily cellular grind. Specifically, we need to understand what happens inside your body every single time you eat.
Yeah, and according to researchers like Dr. Paul Reynolds and Dr. Ben Bickman, the holy grail here is blood glucose balance.
Which means keeping your blood sugar hovering right around 100 milligrams per deciliter. Right.
Spot on. And to do that, the protocol is waiting a minimum of 2 to 4 hours between meals. And I mean absolutely no grazing. Plus, you have to prioritize protein to blunt those cravings.
Because the damage doesn't just magically begin the day someone gets a metabolic disease diagnosis. It happens in the spikes along the way, doesn't it?
Exactly. Whenever your blood sugar shoots significantly above that 100 mark, your body undergoes something called unregulated non-enzymatic glycation.
Right, and the sources describe these excess sugar molecules acting like, well, like a child with sticky fingers just running wild through your house, or your body in this case. They permanently attach to your proteins and cause severe oxidative stress.
Dr. Reynolds actually uses a really great burnt toast analogy for this.
Oh yeah, I love this one.
Yeah, he shows how a non-diabetic eating that standard bowl of oatmeal we mentioned can experience a glucose spike up to 170.
Wow. 170 from oatmeal.
Right, and that spike triggers the Maillard reaction inside the body. It's the exact same chemical process that puts a brown, crispy crust on a seared steak or a piece of burnt toast.
But it's happening at 98 degrees inside your veins.
Exactly. It's slowly stiffening your blood vessels, your skin, and your organ tissues.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if an quote-unquote innocent bowl of oatmeal is actively stiffening my tissues and burning my organs just like a diabetic, are we supposed to just never eat carbs again? Or is the continuous grazing the real villain here?
What's fascinating here is the mechanism behind that continuous eating. The grazing is absolutely the true villain.
So the constant snacking is what's really getting us.
Yes, because when you're constantly snacking throughout the day, your insulin is forced to stay chronically elevated. And elevated insulin sends this continuous signal to a nuclear receptor in your body called PPAR gamma.
PPAR gamma, okay.
Think of it like a master switch. When it's flipped on by constant insulin, it tells your adipocytes, your fat cells, to just perpetually store fat.
So you're basically never giving your mitochondria a chance to rest or process the fuel they already have.
Right, or clean up the metabolic exhaust. They just become utterly overwhelmed.
And the data on this constant simmering burn is wild. I mean, the metadata indicates that if you have a pre-diabetic A1C of 5.7%, which for anyone listening is just a blood marker showing how much of that glycated hemoglobin is floating around, you face a 300% higher risk of cardiovascular death compared to someone sitting at a healthy 5.0%.
It's staggering.
A 300% difference just from that tiny, seemingly harmless percentage jump.
It really highlights how incredibly toxic high glucose is over a decade or two. I mean, it degrades your joint cartilage, it causes wrinkles by actively destroying skin elasticity.
And it oxidizes your cholesterol, right? Forming those lethal, small, oxidized LDL particles that actually clog arteries.
Exactly. So if constant sugar spikes are glycating and burning our cells from the inside, we need to look at how ultra-processed foods are physically tearing down the walls that protect our bloodstream from the outside world.
Right, the gut barrier. Dr. Mark Hyman lays out this 10-day elimination reset in the sources.
Yeah, and the protocol involves cutting out the modern dietary immune triggers for just 10 days. That means removing gluten, dairy, sugar, and ultra-processed foods entirely.
Which, honestly, walking through a modern grocery store makes that incredibly difficult, especially considering how biologically wired we are to crave those hyperpalatable foods.
Oh, absolutely. It's an uphill battle. But the underlying reason for doing this reset is staggering. Roughly 60% of your entire immune system resides directly in your gut tissue.
60%, that's huge.
Yeah, the gut is the primary front line of your body's defense. And the lining of your intestines is only one cell thick.
Just one cell thick.
Yeah.
And modern diets filled with emulsifiers and artificial ingredients, they just break down the tight junctions holding those cells together.
Which leads to what we call leaky gut. Once those junctions break, microscopic food particles and bacterial waste slip through the cracks and enter the sterile environment of your bloodstream.
You know, it sounds like the gut lining is a nightclub bouncer.
I like that.
Yeah, like when we eat ultra-processed foods, the bouncer basically falls asleep. So all these uninvited, messy particles sneak into the VIP section, which is the bloodstream, and the immune system sees them, panics, and basically starts a massive bar brawl.
That is a perfect way to picture it. And the medical term for that bar brawl is molecular mimicry. And it is devastating.
How does molecular mimicry actually work, though?
So the immune system flags these invading food particles as dangerous pathogens and creates antibodies to attack them, but it gets confused.
Because they look similar.
Exactly. The sequence of amino acids in a dairy or gluten protein looks strikingly similar to the proteins that make up your own thyroid or your joints or your brain tissue.
Oh, wow. So the friendly fire starts.
Right. Those new antibodies cross-react. Your immune system starts attacking your own healthy organs.
Yeah.
And this is the hidden driver of systemic autoimmunity and chronic inflammation.
There's actually a case study in the materials about a patient of Dr. Hyman's. She was suffering from severe psoriatic arthritis, debilitating migraines, and depression. And she was spending like $50,000 a year on intense immune-suppressing drugs.
And nothing was giving her relief.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So Dr. Hyman simply put her on this 10-day gut reset diet, supplemented with some basic probiotics and antifungals. And in 6 weeks, all of her chronic conditions vanished entirely. She safely tapered off all of her medications.
That's incredible. And the broader application for you as a listener is immediate. In the short term, clearing out those inflammatory triggers eliminates brain fog, unexplained mood swings, gastrointestinal distress.
And zooming out to the long term.
Halting molecular mimicry prevents the autoimmune conditions that cause massive suffering as we age. You basically stop the daily false alarms that keep the immune system aggressively overactivated.
Okay, so we patched the gut barrier so new toxins can't get in, and we've stopped the daily internal fires of high blood sugar. But what do we do about the decades of cellular garbage already floating around inside our organs?
We have to find a way to trick the body into taking out its own trash.
Right, which brings us to the research of Dr. Valter Longo and the Fasting Mimicking Diet, or FMD.
Yeah, this is a periodic 5-day regimen. You consume very specific ratios of low calories, low protein, and low sugar, but high amounts of healthy fats.
And a typical person might do this just once every 3 or 4 months, right?
Exactly. You don't do it constantly.
And just to be clear, you do this without altering your baseline standard of medical care. But the biological trick happening under the surface is incredible. By starving the cells of readily available nutrients like glucose and heavy proteins, healthy cells respond by entering a highly protected winter mode.
Yes. And while in that slow, aging, protective winter mode, healthy cells initiate a process called autophagy.
Autophagy, that's the cleanup process.
Right. They start actively scanning their own internal structures, looking for damaged organelles, misfolded proteins, or old mitochondria.
Like taking inventory of the junk.
Exactly. The cell tags this garbage with a special marker, and a structure called the lysosome comes over and literally digests it.
Yeah.
The cell eats its own damaged components to survive the perceived famine. It cleans house.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Cancer cells cannot do that.
No, they can't.
A defining feature of cancer cells is that they just cannot stop dividing and metabolizing. So by dropping your protein and sugar intake on this 5-day diet, your body drastically lowers its levels of IGF-1, which is insulin-like growth factor 1.
And that hormone normally protects cancer cells and tells them to grow.
Right. So plunging those levels is literally like putting a marathon runner in the middle of a desert without water. The diseased, mutated cells just exhaust themselves and die off.
And the clinical evidence supporting this mechanism is incredibly robust. The Italian National Cancer Institute conducted an observational report with roughly 20 stage 4 cancer patients.
Stage 4, that's advanced.
Very. They utilized the FMD in tandem with standard immunotherapy and chemotherapy protocols.
Wait, let's make sure we have this right. The data shows 5 out of 20 terminal stage 4 patients went into unexpected remission just by changing their cellular fuel source during their treatment.
Yes, 5 out of 20 achieved unexpected remission.
That is wild.
The temporary starvation environment made the cancer cells highly vulnerable to the therapies while wrapping the healthy cells in a protective shield. And for the general population just looking to stay healthy, the clinical trials show that completing just 3 cycles of the fasting mimicking diet reduced a person's biological age by 2.5 years.
2.5 years younger.
Yeah, it drastically reduced liver fat and successfully reversed immunosenescence.
Immunosenescence, which is the physical aging and degradation of the immune system.
Reversing it means restoring the healthy ratios of youthful white blood cells. You're systematically creating a highly hostile environment for disease while giving your healthy cells a deep, rejuvenating structural cleanse.
Okay, so up to this point, we've repaired the body's physical engine. Now, we must look at the command center running it all, the brain.
The brain, yes.
The sources highlight engaging in adaptive speed of processing brain training as a non-negotiable strategy.
This approach is championed by neuroscientists like Dr. Majid Fotouri and Dr. Henry Monkey, building on the foundational neuroplasticity work of Dr. Michael Merzenich.
And the intervention here requires dedicating, 20 to 30 minutes a day, a few times a week, to specific computerized brain training exercises.
But the absolute key word in this protocol is adaptive.
Right. It can't just be static.
No, the program has to continuously monitor your performance and push you just outside your comfort zone. The cognitive sweet spot is adjusting the difficulty, so you are getting roughly 2 or 3 out of every 10 answers wrong.
Because the adult brain isn't permanently hardwired, right?
Yeah.
It maintains deep structural neuroplasticity until the day we die.
Exactly. However, casually doing cognitive tasks you're already quite good at does not prompt the brain to expend the massive energy required to physically change its structure.
Wait, so doing my daily Sunday crossword puzzle or, playing a casual game of Sudoku isn't actually helping my brain stay young? Why does the task have to be frustrating to work?
This raises an important question about fundamental neurochemistry. Pushing your processing speed and your sustained attention to the very edge of your ability, to the point of slight frustration, is biologically necessary.
Why is the frustration necessary, though?
Because that specific sensation of mental struggle is the only trigger that causes the frontal lobe to pump out acetylcholine.
Okay, acetylcholine.
Yeah, it's a vital neurochemical that washes over the brain, signaling it to immediately start rewiring itself to handle this new, difficult demand.
So it thickens myelination, right?
Mm.
Which is like wrapping thick electrical tape around your neural pathways so signals travel faster.
Yes, and it physically increases the volume of the hippocampus, which is the brain's memory center.
There's an amazing clinical story from Dr. Fotouri's practice about this. An overweight, older gentleman came in, just completely defeated, admitting he couldn't even remember what he had eaten for lunch that day.
Oh, I remember reading this.
Yeah, and Dr. Fotouri bets him $100 that he could train his brain to memorize 100 distinct words backward and forward. The patient takes the bet, commits to 12 weeks of this heavily adaptive speed training, and returns to the clinic.
And he did it, didn't he?
He slaps a $100 bill on the desk, perfectly recites the words, and calls the mental clarity he gained the best money he ever spent.
That's a powerful illustration. And it's backed by gold standard science. I mean, the NIH funded the massive Axivis study tracking cognitive interventions in older adults over 2 decades.
2 decades of data.
Right. And the researchers found that merely 10 hours of this adaptive speed training, with a few minor booster sessions along the way, reduced the risk of Alzheimer's dementia by 25% over a 20-year window.
10 hours of effort for a 25% reduction in dementia risk over 2 decades. That's an incredible return on investment.
Absolutely.
But, having a fast, structurally sound brain is ultimately useless if the psychological software running on that hardware is stuck in a negative loop. A toxic internal monologue will physically destroy your body through stress, no matter how much you train.
You absolutely cannot out-eat or out-train chronic emotional stress. The body keeps the score.
Which brings us to the psychological strategy. Unmasking self-sabotage via compassionate curiosity. That's a framework developed by psychiatrist Dr. Paul Conti.
Right. And the core idea here is paying close attention to when you inevitably jump to negative self-talk, anger, or defensiveness in your daily life.
Because we all do it.
We all do. But instead of aggressively judging yourself for feeling that way, you pause and ask, where did this reflex come from? You actively analyze your current situation through a lens of what is actually going right rather than what feels threatening.
Because these negative reflexes are rarely random. Early childhood events or intense life stressors force the brain to create unconscious defense mechanisms.
Things like chronic guilt, debilitating shame, or extreme avoidance.
And those mechanisms were brilliantly created by your younger brain to keep you safe from perceived threats in the past.
Exactly. But when you are sitting in a safe environment today and you aggressively attack yourself for feeling anxious, you keep your nervous system permanently trapped in a fearful, highly reactive state.
So what does this all mean? Like, for the listener, we all have a built-in evolutionary survival bias toward negative narratives. We look for the danger. But attacking ourselves for having that reflex just keeps the internal threat detection system fully armed and sounding the alarm.
And the physical danger of keeping that threat detection system armed is a phenomenon called allostatic load.
Allostatic load.
Yeah, it's the invisible compounding wear and tear on your organs from chronic stress hormones. Your body is constantly preparing for a physical fight that never comes.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. But by applying compassionate curiosity, literally just saying to yourself, it makes sense that I feel anxious right now based on my past, but I am actually safe, you turn off the amygdala's threat detection.
And your prefrontal cortex comes back online.
Yes. You move out of exhausting survival mode, allowing what Dr. Conti calls the generative drive to take over.
The generative drive.
Right. It's our natural, altruistic, meaning-seeking state where deep healing occurs.
Dr. Conti frequently details new patients walking into his office, describing themselves as completely alone, convinced they are failing at every aspect of their lives.
But then he does the inquiry.
Yeah, within 15 minutes of gentle inquiry, simply looking objectively at the resilience they've shown just to make it to the appointment, they reveal they actually possess deep interpersonal connections and numerous past successes.
Once they recognize their internal narrative is trauma-induced and factually false, they can set boundaries and rapidly reshape their lives.
And systematically shifting your internal focus to positive, objective truths directly balances your neurological drives for both pleasure and assertion.
It increases your personal agency, making you realize you actually have control over your biological responses.
But, shifting a lifelong psychological narrative takes deliberate time and therapy. What happens when an acute wave of panic, insomnia, or an overwhelming food craving hits you right now?
Like in the moment.
Yeah. Your nervous system gets entirely hijacked before your logical brain can even think to be compassionately curious.
That requires an immediate physiological interrupt, which is where the final tool comes in. Hacking the panic button using EFT tapping, as outlined by Jessica Ortner.
EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques, right?
Yes. The physical action is spending 2 to 9 minutes firmly tapping with your fingertips on 9 specific acupressure points on the body.
Like the side of the hand, the eyebrow, under the eye, under the collarbone.
Exactly. And while you're tapping, you vocally acknowledge the exact stressor or craving you're experiencing.
I mean, it sounds incredibly unconventional to tap on your face while talking to yourself.
It does, but the underlying mechanism is pure measurable neurology. When you have a stressful thought, the brain's amygdala instantly sends out a danger signal, kicking the entire body into a fight-or-flight response before logic can even intervene.
So it sounds like while your mind is screaming danger, the physical tapping acts like hitting a Control-Alt-Delete on your amygdala.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, tapping creates a literal traffic jam in your nervous system. These specific acupressure points are located over dense bundles of nerve endings.
Oh, I see.
Physically tapping on them sends a mechanical soothing signal up your spinal cord and into the brain's somatosensory cortex. This physical signal of safety directly competes with the emotional signal of fear coming from the amygdala.
So the brain gets confused by the conflicting data.
Yes, and ultimately reconciles the stressful memory without flooding your physical nervous system with cortisol.
Cortisol being the primary stress hormone that we desperately want to avoid chronically elevating, because it actively breaks down lean muscle mass and tells the body to store deep, visceral belly fat.
Exactly. And the clinical evidence proving this mechanism works is incredibly strong. A landmark study at Bond University demonstrated that a single session of EFT tapping lowered circulating cortisol levels in the bloodstream by a staggering 42%.
42% from just tapping.
Yes, vastly outperforming a control group that just engaged in standard talk therapy.
In one session. The sources also point to functional MRI scans of women dealing with intense food cravings. After just 4 weeks of incorporating tapping, the specific brain regions that used to light up like fireworks whenever they saw images of junk food were completely deactivated.
The craving was just neurologically gone.
It offers immediate, on-the-spot regulation of the nervous system without relying on pharmaceuticals or willpower.
There is a remarkable case study about a woman named Sam, a retired 911 dispatcher.
Oh, the insomnia case.
Yes. She suffered from severe chronic insomnia because she was vividly reliving traumatic emergency calls every single night when she closed her eyes.
So she started a basic 3-minute tapping routine right before bed, simply to give her body a micro boost of physical safety.
And she fell asleep the very first night. She kept the routine up for a month and successfully retrained her nervous system so thoroughly that the trauma loop broke. She eventually didn't even need the tapping to sleep soundly anymore.
It's a perfect example of how rapidly the physical body can heal and recalibrate when we remove the crushing chemical burden of chronic panic.
Absolutely.
Well, we have covered a massive amount of biological and psychological ground today.
You really have.
We started by looking at balancing the daily glucose burn to stop non-enzymatic glycation and those cellular fires. We examined fixing the gut's delicate security system to halt molecular mimicry and autoimmune attacks.
We explored deep cleaning the cellular garbage via autophagy and the fasting mimicking diet.
Then we moved up to the brain, thickening our neural myelination with adaptive speed training, disarming our negative mental software with compassionate curiosity, and finally, hacking the acute panic button with the neurological interrupt of EFT tapping.
It is an incredibly comprehensive blueprint for internal health, but there is one final, deeply human implication drawn from all of these sources combined that we haven't explicitly stated yet.
What's that?
We've spent this entire deep dive focusing intensely on fixing the internal self, your microscopic cells, your gut barrier, your brain tissue, your mind. But the ultimate goal of lowering chronic anxiety, healing your body, and regulating your sense of self is actually external.
External. How so?
Doing all this arduous internal work is what actually allows for the peace, the emotional bandwidth, and the delight that are absolutely necessary to form and maintain healthy, long-term relationships.
Ah, I see.
When you zoom all the way out and look at the broadest scope of global longevity research, deep, meaningful human connection is a massive, independent driver of extending human life. We fix the inside so we have the capacity to connect on the outside.
We attach the foundation of the house so we can actually invite people in.
Exactly.
That is an incredibly powerful way to look at the work of getting healthy. To everyone listening, you not have to overhaul your entire life today. Pick just one single tool from this blueprint. Maybe today you decide to skip the constant snacking to finally give your mitochondria a break. Or maybe you try 2 minutes of tapping the next time you feel a wave of intense stress.
Just one step.
Right. Take one step today to change your foundation. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.